Welcome to the Birth of a Mama podcast, a place where mothers can share their real life stories because every experience is real, every experience is valid. So let's talk about it. Welcome back to the Birth of a Mama podcast. Today I have Jamie on the show. Jamie, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Awesome. Well, let's have you start off by telling the listeners a little bit about yourself and your family.
So I'm 26 years old. I'm married. My husband's name is Craig. I have two little kids. I have a 4-year-old boy. His name is Sawyer, and then I have a 2-year-old girl. Her name is River. Um, and yeah, we that's about it. We're happy little family.
I love it. Okay, so I didn't realize you have two when I sent you
I
the
have
show notes.
two.
When I sent you the show, not the notes, but the outline, I sent you the one for just one kid. So great. Well, that's great. We'll have you share both stories. You can do like a little compare and contrast if you want. So awesome. I like to start with asking if you had to describe the transition into motherhood in 3 words, which would you choose?
Um, uh, Magical and challenging. Yeah, it's definitely, I love it. It's hard to explain. It's,
Yeah.
it's really, it's the moments are amazing, but then there's also moments that are definitely very hard.
Yeah. You really can't quite fully understand it until you've gone through it yourself.
Hmm.
Um, that's kind of like my whole perspective is, you know, being prepared in any way possible by hearing other people's stories and educating yourself and informing yourself is amazing and really useful. But like until you go through it, you just don't realize how much. And it sounds so cliche to say things like, oh, it's magical. Oh, and it, you know, it's hard and things like that. Because of course, but until you go through it, you're like, wow, on a whole nother level, it's so true. Um, Awesome. Okay, so we'll start with you can talk about whichever pregnancy, like your most recent one or your first, and then we can
Hmm.
kind of compare and contrast.
Okay. So my pregnancies were very different. My pregnancy, I'll start with my pregnancy with my son. Um, he, it was rough. I was very sick in the beginning, for probably like literally right up until my first or my second trimester. Um, and it, so that was really hard. Um, and I thought it was going to last forever. And the sickness only lasted in the beginning, but then I was tired the whole entire time. And I had a lot of like hip pain and stuff like that. I was definitely not one that enjoyed being pregnant. Um, but I mean, it was definitely cool, like for it being my first experience, like feeling all the movements and everything. Like that's another thing that's, you never really know what to expect until you actually are going through it, and that part's definitely a really cool part. But for me personally, um, there wasn't a whole lot I enjoyed about being pregnant. It was mostly just kind of getting through till we got there.
Yeah. Did you have any expectations of what pregnancy would be like? You know, before you became pregnant, were you looking forward to it? Did you think it would be a certain way or not really?
I honestly didn't really know what to expect. Um, I mean, I had heard things here and there and like how different things could be. And I always thought it was cute, like seeing all the pregnant women, and I'm like, oh, they look so cute, and I can't wait to have a like round little belly, and then it was definitely just a lot different than I don't even know if I knew what I was gonna expect, but it was different than I would have. So,
Yeah, I think that's common. It was the same for me where I kind of had these expectations of it being really enjoyable and yeah, you just having this like lovely little round belly and getting compliments and people waiting on you hand and foot and I didn't really expect to not feel great, even though
Yeah.
you see in the media like in movies and things, the first thing that happens in a movie when you know you're pregnant is like she pukes, right? And but it was like, "Oh, but that won't happen to me." And so it's just funny, I think, how we kind of have these expectations about how things might go, especially with motherhood. This is a huge one, I think, is like
Mhm.
expectations versus reality, which is a really big reason for me doing this podcast. Um, so yeah, and then your second was your first pregnancy with your son, right?
Yes, yeah. So that was
Yeah.
my first with my son. My second with my daughter. I also with my son, I feel like I gained a lot more weight with him. Not that I really felt like I like gained too much. It was like a normal amount, but I definitely felt like I gained a lot more weight with him. Um, with my daughter, it it was different and kind of it wasn't not anything like I was like expecting it to go. I was expecting it to go pretty much just like how it went with my son. And I didn't really get sick. I had actually just gotten no like was still technically had COVID. I was just getting over. This is when it was like first coming about. And so I had like lost my taste and smell and all that. And I found out I was pregnant with her. And then when it was going into like deeper into the first trimester where I thought I was going to be sick, I had this weird like distortion of my like smell and taste. And so it wasn't like I couldn't eat anything. It was hard for me to cook anything. And so I think that like I think maybe the combination of being pregnant and then having that weird thing just kind of like exploded. And then I wasn't like, I still wasn't feeling good, but it was in a different kind of way. But I never even threw up with her. So that part was easy. I definitely had very low energy. Um, and I had lost a lot of weight from not having an appetite or being able to eat from that weird thing with my smell and taste. So I didn't really gain very much weight, which was nice. um, but yeah, honestly, I feel like with her pregnancy was definitely a lot easier in that aspect. But then like over on like later on, I was definitely like a lot more tired of being pregnant faster. I was a lot more impatient, and I had a lot more like body pain with her. I think I had a little bit of a harder time with that. I had a little bit with my son, but it was a little bit harder with my daughter.
Yeah, I've heard that and with the second and, subsequent pregnancies that sometimes it can just be a little harder on the body because like, you're a little bit older and you're going through it for a second, third, however many times and your body
Mhm.
as much as it knows what to do, it has to do it, all over again. And I only have the one, so I don't have anything to compare mine to, but I've heard that a lot that the second one was different and harder on the body in some ways in terms of like just like discomforts and pains and aches and things like that.
Yeah.
Did you prepare at all for postpartum while you were pregnant with either
No.
pregnancy? No.
Um, I probably a little bit more with my daughter than my son, because like I already kind of knew like okay, I didn't do this last time, so I should probably do this time. But like, I mean, I didn't read any books. I didn't like, I think the biggest thing was I definitely stocked myself up on all the things that I knew I was gonna need for afterwards. But other than that, I just kind of winged it.
Yeah. Yeah. What kinds of things did you stock for yourself?
All just like they had those like Freedom Mom kits that have the like the adult diaper things, and I don't know what
Mhm.
they're called, but like those kinds of things, and a bunch. I got like a whole bunch of like the really big pads and stuff, and
Mhm.
I had a couple extra sets of the like Perry bottles, and the like numbing spray that helps with the pain, and just things like that. All of those kinds of things that you need for afterwards. Um,
Yeah. Yep.
yeah,
Good. Well, at least you prepared a little bit for yourself in terms of healing after birth.
yeah.
So you did some work, which is awesome. Better than like absolutely nothing, you know. So that's good. All right. Well, let's jump into your birth stories. So you can start with an overview of either birth, and then we can go from there.
So my birth with my births were night and day, like between my son and my daughter. They were both so very different. My birth with my son was difficult. It didn't start out that way. The transition to when I first started feeling the contractions to like going to the hospital and getting in there and everything, like that went pretty smooth. We were able to like we just kind of got in. My contractions weren't too crazy. I I had to be sent home once for my contractions weren't close enough together yet, so I had to be sent home, and then basically once I got home, I just had to turn back around to go back around because they were already back to what they should be and starting to get really painful. So I think when I went there, I was 4 centimeters dilated when I got to the hospital, and checked me in, gave me the epidural and everything. And then it took a while um, for it to, like, kind of slowed down the process. It kind of I was there for a while before my water even broke or anything. I think my water broke around like 7 centimeters, and it was like later at night. I think it was like maybe like a little bit before 10 when I started, 10 p.m. when I started like to go into pushing. Um, when they had it's kind of a not fun story, but my hand had like swelled up from the IV, and like a lot. And when I went to go
Mm.
in to push, they think that the needle had moved. So I was feeling everything. I think I pushed for like 45 minutes, and um, which isn't which really isn't bad. But for me, it felt like an eternity. And I was like feeling everything. I definitely had a lot of bleeding. I had like a second-degree tearing, and it was not a good time for that. They kept giving me medicine, and I was just so, because they kept giving it to me, they're like, "Oh, she shouldn't be feeling this bad. Like, let's give her some more medicine." And of course, I hadn't eaten anything, so I was just done. Like I couldn't even. It kind of makes me sad because I was so foggy. Like my husband has told me a lot of the things that had happened. Apparently I was like cussing my mother out, and I felt terrible because she's like in tears, and she felt so bad, and I never talked to people like that. So
Oh my
it was
gosh.
just, it was crazy. It was definitely like a movie scene, I feel like. Um, and with my daughter, it was just I had false labor with her like the week before. And so when the real contractions actually came, I didn't think they were actually real. So and we with my daughter, now like we live an hour away from the hospital that we were delivering at, so we had to like really try to plan it right. Um, and so my husband almost went to work, and I'm glad that he did it. I like finally told him not to go to work, and I was like, okay, we need to go like right now, because I finally figured out that they were real, and it took us a while to get there, and I was like 7 centimeters when we got to the hospital. I could barely even walk through the doors. And I hadn't felt those contractions really with my son because I had already had the epidural at that point. So I didn't even know what the real bad contractions were until then. So, but it went really smooth. They got us in really quickly. And they got me my epidural like right away. And then once that kicked in, it was really good. I didn't feel anything. She came out and like one push, we were there for probably like, I don't know, an hour. And then she was there within like the hour of us being there. It was crazy. I didn't honestly believe my doctor when she told me that she was here. I was like smiling and talking to my husband, and like we were all like laughing and joking. And she's like, here she is. And I'm like, okay. But she was. Yeah, so it was definitely night and day difference.
Yeah, I love that. That sounds so much more enjoyable. I'm like thinking back to my birth, and I did not have an epidural, and I honestly like it was crazy. It's just so intense, and yes, it's painful. Like I know some people don't like to call it painful, but I just label it what it was for me, and it was
Hmm.
freaking painful, man. Like, so just imagining having like a conversation and joking, and then you're like, "Oh, your baby's here." It just sounds
Yeah,
lovely.
I'm like, it was like a dream. Like
Yeah,
I'm like, did that even just happen? Like, I don't even, it was
I love
crazy.
it. Yeah, yeah. And was your son like who was he at home with grandparents or where was
Yes.
he?
Yeah, we dropped him off on our way down. We dropped him off to my mother-in-law. Um, and we called her and we're like, you need to come outside and grab him because we literally need to go like right now.
Yeah,
I couldn't
yeah,
even
yeah.
talk to her.
Well, yeah, you had already done so much work when you got there. You were a seven. Like, I'm
Yeah.
proud of you that you did that with no, you did that with no pain management except for, yourself and
Yeah,
your
that
and your
was
husband.
I thought for a minute we might have the baby in the car and I was really scared. Please get us to the hospital.
Yeah, yeah, because that's quite a drive. So that's understandable that you're like this might be happening in the vehicle.
Yeah.
Yeah, that does happen. That does happen.
I know.
Awesome. Well, you can talk about the moments right after birth with your son compared to your daughter since they were so different.
Um, so with my son, I mean, both of them were definitely very emotional, but in two very different ways, I feel like. With my son, I mean, it was my very first time like experiencing anything like this. And I just remember him coming out, and I was also in so much pain, and I just like wanted it to be over so badly. And he was finally out, and it was finally somewhat over, and they plopped him on me, and I just like exploded with tears and emotion. And I don't know if I've ever cried so hard in my life. Like it was crazy. I was like so happy to see him, but I was also just so like just distraught from everything that had just happened. And it was crazy to see him like how he was. And I was also like it was I don't even know how to explain it. Like you could just don't even know until you're experiencing it. Um with my daughter, it was I honestly, I just felt like I was in a dream. She was just here, and I was like, oh, there she is, and I'm talking to her, and of course I'm crying because I'm like so excited to see her, and it's emotional, but I'm like more happy cries. Not that I wasn't happy to see my son, but I think I was just there was just so much going on, and I was more aware and more there mentally with my daughter, I feel like. So it was two very different experiences, but they were both very emotional.
Yeah. Yeah, understandably. Did you feel like one compared to the other, you were more like exhausted feeling from the length of labor or anything like that, like with your son?
Yeah, oh, definitely. Definitely way more exhausted with my son. I did feel a lot more energy and a lot more just like there and with it, and it was cool because I'm like, oh, this is what it's like, or maybe I don't know, maybe this is just what it was like then. It was just really cool to actually like see everything, and like I feel like I didn't really fully experience everything with my son because it was just such a crazy time, and I was so doped up on the epidural, and I didn't even know what was going on half the time. And so it was just nice to like, oh, this is what the happy scenes are in the movies when like they come out and they're all like their makeup's done and they're all smiling. And so it's kind of, I mean, it was cool to kind of experience both, but definitely I was a lot more exhausted and overwhelmed with my son.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear you with that. That's how I felt with my daughter as well. It was just like pure exhaustion and almost like having this like outer, like I wasn't even in my body anymore, you know? Like I
Hmm.
was like having an outer body experience, and like it wasn't my life, like that wasn't happening to me. Almost because it was so much that it was like it's almost like it's defense mechanism that your body and brain do, you know, so that you can just like get through something that's really challenging and difficult and like borderline traumatic. Even if everything goes fine, quote unquote, right, like it can still be so intense that we have that like kind of response to it of just what just happened, you know, versus feeling so present like you got to feel with your daughter, which is really special.
Yeah, it definitely, I mean, to be honest, neither of them really felt real. Um, and it was like you said, like, is this even my life? Like, how is this even my life? Is this really me? Like, how is this actually happening? And I
Yeah.
felt that with both, but in very different ways.
Yeah. Definitely like the biggest WTF moment of your life is having a baby.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I feel like no matter how many times you do it too, it's like always going to be like, wait, what just happened?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. Okay, let's talk about with both. How did the first couple of weeks go? Because sometimes that can be even harder than birth itself.
Yeah. God, it was, they were both hard. They were both hard. Honestly, and this is where I feel like it starts to reverse. I, at the time, I felt like it was really hard with my son. He cluster fed, the sleeping was, not there very much. For the first week, we had him on his little boppy lounger pillow, and we all slept on the couch in the first week because we were constantly back and forth to the kitchen. And I bottle fed. I gave him formula. I didn't breastfeed. I had a traumatic experience in the hospital with them. They were kind of trying to like force me to breastfeed, and I definitely wanted to try it. And I was trying it, and I had like cracked and bled the very first time he even tried. Like the very first, like it was a very painful experience for me. And I was like, if this is going to stress me out so much to where like he's getting stressed out, and it's going to be like, I know that it takes a couple weeks to adjust, and like this is going to be a really long couple weeks, and I really just want like it to go smooth. I don't want us to be stressed out. So it took a while. They were really trying to like get me to do it. And I tried pumping, and I didn't have anything yet. So it was my milk came in probably like a week or so later. Like it came in kind of late. So it definitely, it was hard. So I just decided to bottle feed him, and um, so we were back and forth to the kitchen a lot, and yeah, we spent the first week on the couch. and he was eating like every hour. It was exhausting. It definitely got better um, over time. I don't even it's hard to even like look back because there's times where I just like don't even remember what happened because I'm like
Yeah.
I was so sleep deprived. Like my husband has a way better memory than I do in the first place. But so I usually ask him all the questions like what happened? Like do you remember this? So yeah, but from what I can remember it was definitely challenging for him, but with my daughter she her cry, and I probably remember this one more because it was a lot more recent, but she's a much louder cry than my son did. And so this is a lot harder to like not get so stressed out about, like, when they're crying and like you're like overwhelmed and
Hmm.
stressed out and you're just trying to get them to stop. And even though it's like normal for them to cry because that's what they do, but then you're like, no, 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 don't cry. So um, she we had a little bit harder we had a hard time with my son with the feeding as far as like adjusting him to the right formula. And he had some like the acid reflux like going on. We had to give him like medicine for that. So that was hard to deal with. And then we had my daughter was having a hard time with formula too. We ended up having her on like a hypoallergenic formula for a while. She was like spitting up a lot, and so adjusting to that part was really hard. As far as the sleeping, like she, it was probably about the same, like sleeping wise, but I feel like she didn't sleep as much as he did. Like he would take really long naps. Like it would be rough. He'd sleep most of the day and then be up at night pretty much. And then she was just like, she just didn't want to sleep. Like she would just have short like periods of time. So like I'm like, what was I doing? Like, did I get enough stuff done? Like, like I could have gotten so much stuff done while like she's not sleeping. I could be getting this, this, and this done, or like, eating or showering or doing the things you need to do, but can't.
Hmm. Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. It's like the most basic things of our life, like sleeping, feeding ourselves and the
Yeah.
baby, like all these things. And then all while we're, like not sleeping, and feeding is not always as straightforward as it seems like it's going to be. Like with breastfeeding, it seems like it's going to be this simple thing that should just work because that's how your body's designed, right? And then when it doesn't, it's like painful, and your milk's not in, or you have a low supply and the latch is wrong. It's like all these things that can happen and come into play, and it's like so overwhelming, and there's often guilt that comes along with it. Hopefully you didn't feel any of that, but did you have any guilt from like deciding to formula feed? Because I did the same thing. I had
Hmm.
cracked, bleeding, bruised, super, super painful like latch that my daughter had. She had a lip and tongue tie, like you name it, like it happened with us. And so I eventually had to give up because it was just ruining me mentally.
Hmm.
And, it's like, what's the point if you are this like shell of a person, right? Like you can't be a good
Hmm.
mom if you aren't there, mentally. So yeah, I ended up like just moving over to formula, but I had this immense guilt about it. Like I was, choosing the lesser option, selfishly, to feed her formula, which is so not true. And like, it's
Hmm.
not lesser. And I'm a dietitian, and I think a lot of that comes from like, education around breast milk and how good it is. And sure, it's great, but at what cost, right? So,
Hmm.
did you experience anything like that, like when you decided to switch to formula?
Yes, I definitely had some guilt. I definitely felt like I got when I was at the hospital, I definitely felt like I got a lot of kind of backlash from it. Like they really like didn't want me to like give up on it or anything, and they were really trying to push it. And I just like I finally had to just like stop myself and just be like, you know what? It's okay to be selfish. Like it's not like you're not like feeding your baby, like you're still feeding your baby, you're still giving them what they need. And, you know, that doesn't mean that, like, yeah, of course I would have loved to give them like the best version of whatever, but, sometimes that's just not how things go. So, kind of try to talk myself down and just be like, you know what? If you want to be selfish with this one thing, like, I don't think it's the end of the world, like, and just try to block out any of because I know, like, a lot of times when you're a mom, and sometimes other moms can be a little judgmental with things, and you have to just kind of
Totally.
block that out, and, and just know that you're a good mom no matter what. And
Yep,
yeah.
exactly. Good for you. Good for you. Cause like it's crazy out there. Like it's a mom eat mom world in a sense, you know? Like you're right. Like I say we, like the collective we as collective
Hmm.
moms are so quick to judge. And even people who aren't parents yet are so quick to judge. Or like our own parents who did this, 30 plus years ago are quick to
Hmm.
judge. It's like we live in different times. Every family is different, every baby is different, every mom is different, and their needs are going to be unique. And so, who are we to say that they're doing it wrong or that's not the best option? Like we don't, you have to know the full story and why someone's making a choice, right? So, but
Right.
yeah, I just remember that the guilt around that for me was so immense and
Hmm.
it's just so unnecessary, too. Like we don't have enough to worry about already. We have to
Right.
now worry that we're not feeding our child correctly or whatever. And it's like, just so not true. Like
Yeah.
formula is 100% adequate. Like I don't want any mom listening to feel guilt if she ends up needing to choose formula or doesn't even want to try breastfeeding. That's your choice too, Like it's all your choice and it's all unique to you and your family and what works for you. So I'm really glad that not glad that you had that experience because it's I mean I don't want anyone to go through like the pain of trying to breastfeed their baby, but like glad that you had a kind of a positive experience with it where you were able to tell yourself that it was okay and hopefully not feel guilty for too long. And I had a similar experience in the hospital too where I was kind of shamed for, you know, feeling like I needed to feed my baby some formula because she was hungry and I felt like I wasn't producing milk and it was really painful and I wasn't really getting support. I just felt like I was getting shamed and I'm like, okay, well, you're going to shame me, but you're not going to help me do this in a way that isn't like super painful, right? So it was a little bit of a strange experience. And if there is a second time, I think I'll be a lot less hard on myself, like if it doesn't work out, I'm not gonna, kill myself over it. Like just let it go a little sooner, Yeah, it's just not
Totally.
worth it. It's just not worth
No.
it. We have so much to deal with as moms, especially in those early days. It's a lot of stress as it is. So, um, yeah. How did your healing go? I know you with you first you said you had some tearing, some second degree tearing. How did you heal from that? How long did it take you to like because I tore as well and I just remember sitting down, getting up, like all of it was so painful and I was so sore for like a couple of weeks.
Yeah, it was the healing part, I feel like was probably one of the worst parts because
Mhm.
you're just like ready for it to all just be over and just enjoy your baby, and you still have all these things that you're dealing with that, and not like you've already went through 9 months of having all your insides being squished up and moved around. And um, it's definitely a lot on your body, and you definitely feel it afterwards. I just remember like um, the feeling of it with both of them. You just feel like so heavy in your stomach, and like at least for me, like I just felt like everything was just gonna fall right out. Like I'm like it just doesn't. It just felt so weird. And I definitely I had the tearing. I also lost a lot of blood. I um they when I had my daughter, they had actually told me that I probably should have gotten a blood transfusion, but they didn't do that with
Oh.
me. I didn't like pass out or anything. Like, So, I mean, if I did, they probably would have given me one, but like, I had lost a lot of blood from that. So, and I was anemic during my pregnancy, and then that obviously was a lot worse after that, and then
Hmm.
have been ever since. But I I think I bled for like definitely like a full like 2 weeks at least. Um, it was I think it was less with my daughter. I think it stopped a little sooner with my daughter than it did with my son. Um, I still tore a little bit with my daughter. Um, so I think like as far as the healing part, they were both pretty much the same. Although I do feel like I healed a little bit quicker with my daughter than I did with my son. But it was not fun, very sore and hard to sleep. Not that you're really getting much sleep anyway, but when you can, it's still
Right.
hard to sleep.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm really glad you shared that because I feel like that's a part that sometimes, we don't really know the details of how that's going to go. I think we might assume like, well, yeah, of course we're pushing this pretty large thing out of our body. Like there's a chance that we can tear, and it's always really scary. That's like one of the main fears I think of birth is like tearing and just anything happening down there or like hemorrhaging, yeah, all the
Mhm.
things that we don't want to do that are very real and can happen. So I like to ask about that because I like to just hear everyone's experience, and so that people listening can have a somewhat of a realistic expectation of what could happen. Because I tore too, and it was the same. It was just like, oh, can I just feel normal? Like I'm just ready to feel like me again and not feel like just like I got hit by a train because the exhaustion doesn't help, right? Like you're not sleeping, and sleep is like a huge part of the healing process. And when you're not getting sleep and your immune system's depressed and you're stressed out because you have this new thing to take care of around the clock with no breaks, it's a lot. It takes it out of
Mhm.
you. And then on top of that, your body is like trying to physically recover from basically running a marathon and actually having like physical injuries as well. So it's
Yeah.
just, it's a lot,
Yeah. And then the
and then if you're not
stitches.
eating,
Yeah.
yeah, the stitches. And if you're not eating, like, it depends on how you're eating too. Like, that's going to affect how quickly you heal and how well you heal. How did that go for
Mhm.
you, by the way? Like, nutritionally, like, were you cooking meals for yourself? Were you guys doing takeout? Did you have friends and family around?
We got very lucky because our grandma, or my grandma is like a superwoman, and for both of my pregnancies and my sister's pregnancies, my sister has 4 kids, and for each one of them, she made us meals for like a week's worth of meals,
So nice.
for like dinners and stuff that like you could just freeze, and we had some friends bring us some things, and I mean, we definitely got takeout too, and I would cook here and there, like if it would be easy, like easy dinner. So we definitely weren't eating like the greatest, which I obviously definitely contributes to your feeling like crap. So, um,
Yeah, it's hard though, like if you don't have that built-in support, like someone like your grandma who's doing it for you, it's very,
mhm,
very challenging to find the time and the energy to do that for yourself, because like cooking a nutritious meal, it can be simple, but it still takes time and energy. Like you got to get in the
mhm,
kitchen, you're standing up, you have to chop things, prep things, cook it up, like clean, and then there's a mess afterwards, right? So
right.
it's like, just thinking about it, you're just like, no, let's just like get
Yeah.
takeout or fast food, like something easier. But then it's like
Mhm.
you're not nourishing your body. And so then that's like also doing you a disservice. It's so hard. It's so hard.
Yeah.
That's why support is so important. So amazing that you had someone like your grandma and people supporting you. That's so important. Awesome. So did you take maternity leave, and how long were you out, and how did just like kind of the rest of the later postpartum go for you for both?
So I did take maternity leave. I took a longer one with my son because I had this like feeling that he was going to come early. I don't know why. I was like, he's gonna come early. He didn't. He didn't come early. He was literally like an hour and a half from his due date. Like he was in there the whole time. So I really just was doing nothing for maternity leave for my first. I think I left. I wasn't doing hair. I'm a hairstylist. I wasn't doing hair at the time. I was working at like part-time at like a motorcycle shop. And I I think I also the part of the reason that I took a earlier leave was because I was on like kind of just ready to not be there anymore anyway. Um, so I think I took like almost a month before he was born, and then I didn't go back to work until he was like 7 months old.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
I I had kind of started my career when I was pregnant with him. I had like, well, so when I graduated beauty school, I was like just pregnant with him. I had just gotten pregnant with him. And I went to start at a salon in my first trimester of being pregnant with him. I started at a salon and I hated it. I was so sick and
Mm.
I had such a hard time working and like they just did not care and it was just rough. So I was only there for a couple weeks and then I just decided like I'm just gonna work part-time somewhere for the rest of my pregnancy and then like when I'm ready and when I'm done being pregnant then I will go and start my career as a hairstylist, but like for now I don't see the point because then I was gonna have to start at a new place and then go on maternity leave again shortly after I started there. So, yeah. So then with my daughter, I was like at a salon established, and I I had already done it once, and I was like, well, I don't need to take another month maternity leave because I don't think she's gonna be early. I'm like, I'm hoping maybe, but like I don't know. I'm like, I don't even know. I thought he was gonna be early, and I was dead wrong. So I'm like, I'm just gonna. I like went up until I think like a week before my due date, and then um, I took I took, I think, like just like the 6 weeks of maternity leave and then went back after there. But then when I came back, I was only one day. My grandma helped watch my son, so I was okay for that. But like when I had my daughter, I didn't have anybody to watch my kids at the time. So I was only working one day a week. So it kind
Mm.
of made it an easier transition to going back into work.
Yeah. Yeah, because 6 weeks is so soon, but at least you were only one day. So that
Right.
helps to not make it so hard on you with like still recovering and like getting into the swing of having two instead of just one. So, well, awesome. Let's see. So you returned to work after 6 weeks. Yeah. So with childcare, um, who did you end up putting them in daycare or what did you end up doing for that?
So with my son, for I don't honestly remember how long it was for, but for a little while when I was at my first salon, my grandma was watching him for a little while, and then it just became too much for her, which I'm just glad that you were even watching him for me, like,
Yeah.
and I'm glad that she stopped, and now we can just go and like hang out with her and like not have to worry
Yeah.
about her just like watching the kids.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so, um, so that was cool, but then that's when I went down to the one day a week, and then I was just watching. I was with them during the week, and then my husband was with them on his day off. And then with my daughter, when I started I went to a different salon. When I first had her, I was at one salon, and I was still working the one day a week. And then we moved up. We were in Roseville. We moved up to Placerville, and um, I couldn't make that drive anymore. So I went to a different salon. And then once I started there, my mother-in-law offered to watch the kids because she stopped working. She's actually a hairstylist, and she stopped working at the salon. And so she offered to watch the kids one day out of the week, and then eventually picked up another day. So now she watches the kids 2 days out of the week, and then my husband watches them the other day. So I work a total of 3 days.
Oh, nice. Yeah, it's so like it's crazy to say that it's a luxury to have in-laws or parents that can, provide childcare, but it really is because not everyone has that. Like I have
Right.
that, and I'm so thankful that my mom watches my daughter, 2 days a week, for free because childcare is
Right.
so expensive, which is a
Hmm.
whole other thing. And we're expected to just pay for it and go back to work and just resume life as normal as if we're not now mothers. And that's crazy, and we could do a whole podcast on that, so we will just like stop talking about that there. But I'm so glad that you have, people to help you with childcare, because that's always something that I like to ask about, because it's so different for everybody and it's such a challenge for most.
Hmm.
Yeah. So, how did your actual postpartum experience different, like in general, from maybe what you expected? I know we kind of touched on this in the beginning, and you didn't really have maybe a ton of expectation, but like, did you have any thoughts about how it went compared to maybe what you had dreamed it would be like, or anything like that?
I don't think I really took into consideration like all the like little things that you don't realize go on, like your hormones changing, and you're like a completely different person, and at least you feel like it sometimes. Um, and just how the postpartum depression, and I mean that's a real thing. That's definitely hits, and I think those are the things that like you really are just thinking about. Like for me beforehand, I think I was just thinking about like being pregnant and like feeling the like motions, and like feeling the baby, and like having all the cravings, like all the basically all the things you see on TV, um, or that you hear about. But then all the like real like intense stuff that you don't even realize are there. You don't think about those things until it's happening, and you're like, what is this? Why is this happening to me? Why do I feel like a crazy person? And why am I crying all the time? Like things like that. It's just you don't really realize how like real crazy it can be. Not that it's bad. I'm not making it sound bad because it's great. But there's also
Yeah.
it's a very emotional and exhausting thing.
Yeah. Very well said. Yeah. It's so true. We don't have realistic examples of what it's like. We get snippets of the good parts, and there are a lot of good parts, but, it's also, a huge transition and a huge change. And with that comes usually hardships, right? No matter what the change or transition is in life, motherhood is just like one really big one. But yeah, that's very similar to, I think, my expectations versus reality as well. In what ways do you think you've changed for the better after becoming a mom?
Um, that one's a hard question because I feel like you don't really, I mean, obviously you don't really think about that until somebody asks you, but I do think that I've become a lot more like aware of just things and like life around me and the world, and I feel like I've learned a lot about myself and a lot that I didn't realize that I didn't know. Um, and I just feel like beforehand I was just kind of maybe a little naive and a little oblivious to just like life and the things that go on around you. And I feel like this has kind of forced me to like really hone in. And I mean, as a mom or as a parent, you're kind of forced to like to be aware and be and know to protect your family and your child. And it's just like those are the things that you don't really realize or expect to happen, and they just kind of do. And then I mean, I definitely feel like it's made me like stronger in that aspect to where I can, you know, make out situations that I need to be strong for, or, things that are good or bad. Yeah, so I think that's like one of the big things is it's just definitely made me more aware.
Yeah, that's really beautiful and so true. You just really get like a reality and like priority check. I feel like with parenthood, you really understand what matters and like what's important, and yeah, you become more aware of those things. So I love that. I love that. Do you want any more children? And if so, how do you know? This is a really hard question for some people, and for others, it's really easy. So I'm always curious.
So, yeah, I we don't want any more. In fact, and it's not that I don't love kids because I do and I love my children. But I actually got my tubes removed. And specifically, probably for the fact that um, we knew and felt complete. Like once we decided, I think we kind of decided that once we had our daughter. With our son, I'm not gonna lie, I had a really traumatic pregnancy and birth, and so I think that made me like not want to have another one. So we weren't even sure that we were gonna have our second one. And then we realized, we really want him to have a sibling, and we wanted to have another one and have like we really honestly kind of wanted that family of four. I've always dreamt about like having two and having a small intimate family. So that's how I just kind of felt like I was complete. And we also have twins that run in both sides of our family. And with my sister, she actually, on her third one, they ended up being twins. And I was so terrified of that happening to me.
You're like, I'm out.
And
Nope.
like, those
Nope.
are two like little blessings, and I couldn't even imagine them not being here. But like, whoa.
Yeah. Yeah. Whoa. Exactly. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. I love this for you. I'm so happy for you because like I'm very much on the fence about having a second one. And so I just love hearing other women's perspectives and, why did they choose to have a second or not, or a third or whatever, like how did they get to that decision? Um, and I want to ask, and you don't have to answer this, but is there a reason why you chose to be the one to go and get snipped or tied versus your husband? I'm very curious because I've always told my husband, like, once I know for sure we're done, whether that's like we're one and done with what we have or I want one more, like, you're getting a vasectomy. So I'm just curious, and you don't have to answer, but if you want to share.
No, I'm totally fine. Answering that. But I'm laughing because he's gonna hate me for saying this. But um,
Uh oh.
no, he's great. But I actually told him that. Like I told him that I wanted I wanted him to have a vasectomy, and I was like, can you go do that? And bless his heart, I think he was just too scared. Like he's just it scared him to do that. And um I think a lot of the people that like he had talked to about it, not all of them, but some of them, I think maybe kind of he had built this thing up into his head and made it into like a bigger thing than I think it would have been. And he had told me, like, he's like, if you want me to, like, I'll do it. Like, if you really like, it was just kind of like we went back and forth for it a little while, for a couple times, and we're both very like indecisive. Like, are you sure you want to do that? I won't do it if you don't want me to, or like things like that. So like, um, we're not, the greatest when it comes to making decisions together because we're very indecisive. But I had gotten to a point where I just wanted it taken care of, and I didn't want to go back and forth anymore. And I didn't want it to take a while, and sometimes it can do that if they don't just step up and get it done when they when you want them to get it done. So, not that he wouldn't have, but I just didn't want it to take any longer, and I didn't want there to be any room for something to happen. So
Hmm.
I was like, well, you know what? I'm just gonna do it. Like, we're not
Yeah.
gonna talk about it anymore. Like, if I'm just gonna do it, I'm just gonna go get it done. Like, I've heard then we, don't have any room for like anything to happen, and it'll just happen. And I decided I actually got them removed instead of being tied,
Mm. Hmm.
because I had went to like talk to my doctor about it, and she was telling me that if you got them, for one, if you get them tied, they have a chance to reattach. And then there's also, if you get them removed, there's less of a chance for them to, or for you to get ovarian cancer. So
Mm.
it's was just kind of like, she's like, if you think that it's going to be permanent and and you've made up your mind, then I'd probably recommend doing the removal instead. And so I'm like, well, I've made up my mind, and I know it's hard because I'm young, and a lot of people have told me that, but at this point I'm like, I know that I'm content with our, number and everything. And I'm also not one, like I said, I'm not one that enjoys being pregnant. And it made it very clear with my second one too. I'm very glad that they're here, and I would do it all over again. But yeah, so it's, I honestly didn't realize how like painful it would have been for recovery. And had I known like what it was like, I probably wouldn't have done it, to be honest. But
Really?
yeah, my
Yeah.
doctors was
Yeah.
kind of like, um, the way they were describing it was just making it sound like they're like, oh, it's like a 15-minute procedure, and you'll be back and up and running to work like in 4 days. And of course, they're probably accounting for like an office job, and I'm on my feet all the time, like all day. So that's obviously not realistic for me to be going back to work after that. But I had it in my head that like, oh, it's going to be like a quick, easy thing, and it's not going to be a big deal. So whatever, might as well. And it was not. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like they tend to do that. I feel like they tend to be like, "Oh yeah, like it's going to be like even with birth, it's
yeah,
like no one makes it a big deal, Like it's no problem. It's like, "Wait, what are you talking about? It's no problem." Like this is if you think about what's happening to my body, it seems like a pretty big deal,
it's a
like
big
you're
problem.
removing a piece of me. That seems like a little bit like it's going to take some time
Yeah,
to heal and everything. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, definitely, it definitely did.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you sharing that. I've learned something I didn't know, how, the process was and like the healing and all that. So that's just good to know. And it's such a recurring theme, I feel like, with the men in our lives. I hate to make blanket statements about men because like it's not like all men are the same way or
Right.
whatever, but I know in my life with my husband, it's like I can ask so many times until I'm like, that's it. Like, I'm just doing it. Right. And it could be something as simple as like putting the dishes away or like,
Right.
doing a chore or something as big as like, making a permanent decision about your reproductive health. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like, it's a recurring thing for sure. All right. Well, any resources that you want to share with the listeners, like any books, social media accounts, anything like that that were helpful at any point in your motherhood journey?
Um, I I follow on Instagram. I follow her name is Tessa Romero. Gosh, I think that's Tessa Romero. I want to say that's her name. Um, and she's an influencer and goes it's basically all about moms and like the not necessarily just moms, but kind of more, she gears more towards that, and is really good with changing your perspective, and really good with like mindful thinking. And a lot of times you get into the habit of like thinking like this is too much, why are they doing this, and like all these like negative thoughts come into your head when things get so overwhelming, and it's really for like mental health kind of thing. She's just really helpful with like when you're getting and noticing yourself thinking these thoughts, what to say and what to think in place of those thoughts, like a more positive version and switching it to a more mindful,
Nice.
positive version.
Yeah. Well, we could all use more of that in our lives. That's awesome. So yeah, I'll link that in the show notes for listeners. And then, if anyone has any questions for you and they want to reach out, are you open to being contacted? And where can listeners, find you if they want to reach out?
Yeah, no, totally. Anyone can reach out to me. I'm open to sharing more things or whatever. I'm not judgmental. You can come to me for anything. You can reach me on my Instagram. It's at Jamie Lynn Toth is my Instagram handle. That's my like main one. I have two separate ones for like my like normal life and then my hair life. So I usually just, I try to separate the two so I don't get it all
Yeah.
mixed up.
Yeah. Awesome. Great. Well, we'll link that as well. So if anyone wants to reach out and has more questions, they can. But with that, I just want to thank you, Jamie, so much for coming on and sharing your story.
Thank you so much for having me. I had fun.
Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Be sure to follow me on Instagram at the.moms.nutritionist and subscribe to this channel to be notified of each new episode. And if you'd like to support the podcast even further, please like this video and share it with a friend or anyone who could benefit from watching. This helps get the word out there, which helps moms heal and thrive.